Okay, I think we can probably start this show. Oh, the boss is here. That's right. All right, now, the key thing is this, as you know, there's a financial crisis on both sides of the Atlantic in our organization. And in the United States, the remedy is in process. We've been at it for a long time. And we've made some changes, and they're very dramatic changes, which I don't think you have knowledge of from the inside of what the impact of the changes are, and what the problems are which had to be overcome to make these changes. You will notice if you look at the scores that in recent weeks there's been a qualitative improvement in the income for the regions. And this is not accidental. We've been working at it for a long time. I've been at it since the end of 1999, when I was first able to intervene in the organization, because I was not allowed by law to intervene in the direction of the organization until that time, until I got completely off paper. So at that time, I launched something with over a lot of objections, a lot of resistance. We more easily, at the beginning, we succeeded in revitalizing the National Center's performance in terms of income, because Jerry did a good job getting on top of the case, organizing the team, and it worked. Over this period, you've had, apart from Philadelphia, and in a certain sense, a small local of Houston, you had less than acceptable performance in virtually all the regions. And this was habituated. This was not because we had difficulties, we had entirely internal difficulties, internal organizational difficulties in the regions. There's not for any difficulties with the population and so forth. Yes, the population is becoming poorer, the possibility of income is dropping and so forth. But there was total resistance from 2000 on, especially total resistance to the reforms that I was introducing. Now, the reforms had several characteristics, and they involved, one thing was the starting of a youth movement. The youth movement actually started in the year 2000. It started because we had in California and elsewhere, in Sheldon, California, we had groups of youth, student youth, who came around as young adults, who were interested in what we're doing in terms of my campaign. So it came as a result of the 2000 phase of my presidential campaign. We had a number of youth coming around, responding in point of fact to how disgusting the thought it was to have Clinton replaced by Gore. They did not want to drown in Gore, as the saying goes. So anyway, so we started then. Now what happened, you had, on the West Coast, you had Lenny was working on this there, also, of course, her husband Phil, and also Harley. So they pulled together a group. Now what they did is they organized retreats, as in the hills, etc., outside of Los Angeles. And we'd have long sessions, which I would usually address, and then other people would also make addresses. So in this process, with this kind of discussion, we began to get character out of all of these youth contacts. It sorted itself out. So the more viable ones, the ones who were potentially more responsive, who would think more, not just looking for a free ride, so to speak, would come around. So we began to get a youth movement. Now, I designed the youth movement from the beginning on several principles. Now, the first principle is the most important, which I think probably a lot of people here have settled their own views on. What is creativity? One of our big problems we were discussing in Russia. In Russia, even some of our friends don't know what creativity is. They think it's some kind of dangerous, evil thing that might turn against you. You want to have something you can control and beat up rather than this. They don't believe in creativity, because creativity is the difference between man and a beast. And the difference between man and a beast is the discovery of a universal physical principle, as typified, for example, by Kepler's discovery of gravitation, which many people teaching in universities today, teaching physics, will not accept Kepler's discovery. But this quality, which I've written a great deal about, so I don't need to elaborate too much on it here, this quality of discovery, of universal physical principles, and the same thing that occurs in competent direction of choral classical singing. It also can occur in the string quartet setting, because the same principles apply if the performers actually are performing what they are hearing in their mind and imposing that on the instrument, rather than trying to play the notes of the instrument. When someone tries to play a musical instrument, they ruin the music, because the instrument has no intelligence. There may be intelligence in the instrument's design, but it's a stupid thing. It's almost as stupid as a green.
And that's green.
But the intelligence lies when the tone is heard in the mind of the performer, and the performer gets the instrument, or the human voice, or the woodwind, to produce the tone they hear in their mind, then it's music. When they're trying to play the notes of a score on an instrument, as if their mind were not involved, but only their sexual appetites, then you get a bad effect. We did a real demonstration recently, which I referred Arnold's attention to recently, because I thought he might want to revive his efforts in that direction. On the question of the Bach out of the fugue. Now, you know, the fourth section of the Bach out of the fugue is essentially the reference point for Beethoven's Grosse Fuge. Now, the performance of this is not so easy. And for many people, it's impossible, particularly because they have a conception of what a Bach fugue ought to look like. And that gets in their way. So they produce noises which play the notes in the right places if they're lucky. But it isn't music. It's notes. The point is that in order to get this to work, take the fourth section of the Art of the Fugue, which you can demonstrate with a string quartet, that sort of thing. The point is, instead of playing notes against notes, you've got to play voice against voice. Now, in some of these cases, you have, in all string quintets, quartets of classical type, you have often a pairing of a coupling at different points in the process among different instruments. That is, two instruments may play one voice, and another three instruments, or for example, may play another voice. And the key thing at counterpoint is not to get so note-related that you lose the music. And the music is the vocal line. So you have distinct vocal lines which are playing against each other, and suddenly this thing that seems like a jumble of notes suddenly now makes sense. And the way you teach this is that you've got to get this in the mind. You've got to get this tone placing in the mind. In other words, the mind must be able to hear something mentally and force it out through the singing apparatus or through the musical instrument, not the other way around. So this means the training of the mind. Now, the best training of the mind is to have a lot of people who are trained in bel canto exercises, Florentine bel canto, strictly Florentine bel canto, no compromise. Because you want to get precise intonation, which our friend Norbert Reiner was famous for. Precise intonation. You're going to deviate from precise intonation, but before you can deviate, you've got to get there. You can't get near a village unless you go to the village itself. You're going to the outskirts of a village often in performing, not quite the tone that seems to be written on the score, but something near it. You may darken or lighten or sharpen the tone as required. This is often required by language, all these kinds of things. So the way we found it works. And the problem is there's an absolute lack of consistent bel canto, strict discipline in vocal singing. Because that's the only way you get an inner sense of intonation. And remember Brian, the experiment we've done with Komodo with him, an astonishing precision in intonation within a single cycle. Call the tone, he's in within a single cycle at any point. Now this is normal. That's what it takes to make a great string quartet. That quality of precise intonation. Now, therefore, what you want to do with these singers is you want the singers to practice repeatedly, to concentrate largely on warm-ups. And it should be bel canto warm-ups, not group warm-ups, but working through each part of the assembly at a time. As John does this, for example, in the U.S. We've got people who have musical talent in training, and they function as leaders in following up on this sort of thing. Then we got our friend from Mexico up there, and he's very good on the voice. He has a few funny ideas about some other things, but when it comes to the human voice, he has remarkable insight. Rare, but remarkable insight. Okay? So therefore, when you put people through this process, you have something occurs which to the outsider seems magical. When you have a chorus which is actually tuned and has learned how to sharpen or lighten the intonation at various points in order to convey a continuity of a vocal line, then counterpoint is no longer messy. And you can listen to the Amadeus recording of the Grosse Fuga. You get a sense of that. Then you hear somebody else trying to perform it. Other quartets trying to perform it. They make a mess of it. It's a splatter. It is a splatter of notes. It is not a coherent idea. Because the trick, of course, in music is that the idea must go into your mind as an idea, not as a sound. The conception of development must go into your mind as an idea, not as sound. You can't make music by making noises, by making sound. It's something that happens only in the human mind. And the faculty by which this is done is creativity. This is this in-betweenness, which is what Ferkler was famous for. It performed between the notes. This requires rigorous choral training in a strictly classical tradition and in a strictly Florentine bel canto tradition, with emphasis on precise intonation. No sloppy, my independent way of thinking about it. It has to be highly disciplined, it has to be directed. Now, the individual person in a quartet can hear this. That any member of a string quartet can hear what they're doing. As Norbert used to say when we discussed how he would rehearse, he wouldn't say, let's correct this error. He would simply say, let's do it again. Because the memory of what they had just done is in their mind. If you say, just do it again, then they're going to locate what wasn't perfect about what they heard, what didn't serve the purpose. There was no need to say, do this, do that. That's for children. Among accomplished performers, it's just simply know there's an objective. The objective is sometimes called beauty in music. To get a line so that you don't hear the note. You hear the intention behind the note. So this is what we concentrated on. I said, okay, don't get into drama. I banned drama. Don't do it. We've got a few people who can teach people something about drama they can learn from it. But the romanticism is so strong an influence, you cannot get any rigor. It's a mess. Stick to choral music. Because there's a discipline. You cannot make up your own mind of what you'd like to express. You have to meet the group responsibility in the chorus. And only in that way can you succeed. So therefore we stick to two areas. One, creativity as defined as scientific creativity, which is the relationship of the individual mind to nature. Music, as the typification of classical art, is the relation among social processes, the relationship of the individual mind to a social process. The most excellent expression of that is the Bach fugal work, which is the relationship of the individual hearer or singer to the social process, and the identity of the composition lies not in the parts heard, it lies in the composition as a whole. Now, we have achieved with the youth movement, by comparative academic standards, we've produced in the youth movement a better rate of progress in actual understanding of scientific work than I've seen in any other location or any other circumstance, including universities. We're doing a better job than the best universities are in educating youth in science. And by coupling this, recognizing there's a difference between a scientific appreciation of something in nature and a comprehension of something in a social process. Music is the most natural expression of the social process as such. And that's what you want to get. So you want to get this relationship between two things. The mind, which understands the physical universe, that's individual. It may be social in implications, but the object you're focused upon is how is nature or how is a social process behaving as an object of investigation. With art, you're focused, with classical art, you're focused on the principle of social organization, which is expressed by the director of a chorus who knows what he's doing. With a chorus which rehearses on the basis of warm-ups, which are bel canto warm-ups, and get the chorus tuned up before doing anything else with it. Tune it up. But don't start to sing until you tune it up, because they're going to have enough trouble in doing their job in the first place, particularly with an amateur chorus. So you've got to get all the groundwork has to be straightened out beforehand. And it takes time. It may take a half an hour to do a warm-up for the chorus, just to get them in tune. Then go at it. Then you will hear. They're doing everything right, but it's wrong. They're not making any mistakes. Look at the score. They're not making any mistakes. And given their vocal training, they're not doing too badly. But why is it wrong? It has no coherence. It has no integration. Then the director has to do what? What Fagel talks about. The director has to start to say, darken this, do this, adjust this, to adjust this. Because what has to emerge as the challenge of the Bach, of the Art of the Fugue, or the challenge of the broken fugue on Beethoven, is to take a bunch of notes and get rid of the notes. So the mind is not focused on the notes, it's focused on the process of development, a vocal line, or the equivalent of a vocal line. See, for example, like the fourth part of the Art of the Fugue, you've got a problem arises there. Is how do you get this distinction, the vocal line? Well, you have to color the line that you want to color so that it stands in contrast with another line which has a different color, and you want to bring them together in a resolution which comes like a discontinuity, which gives you the idea of the composition, and now you want to recapitulate that experience. And we were doing that in Leesburg. They came up to the house, and we went through this for about an hour and a half. And just experimentally, this thing became very clear as a very specific example of what we have to do. So the change in the organization is a result in the U.S., and the improvement is spectacular. The change comes, first of all, from the fact that the youth movement changes the organization. As long as the youth movement is done the way I've prescribed, it works. Any other approach to the youth movement doesn't work. It'd be a failure. Because you must deal with this population. Remember, you're dealing with three generations. You're dealing with the baby boomer generation, largely now concentrated between 55 and 65 years of age. They're about to go out of power. They're at the end of their professional careers. And they were brainwashed. They were brainwashed and mentally destroyed by the Congress for Cultural Freedom, which was a deliberate intention of the British and certain people in the United States at the end of World War II to eliminate Roosevelt. They couldn't eliminate the effect of Roosevelt's success with the older adult generation, our generation. They couldn't do it. They could corrupt them, they could intimidate them, but they could not make them essentially rotten. He said, we're going to make their babies rotten. We're going to make the children born to the returning veterans rotten. How? We're going to have a social studies and art program based on existentialist conceptions of sophistry. So you had the entire population of Western Europe and the United States and other parts of the world subjected to brainwashing in this form, the Congress for Cultural Freedom, based on the existentialist model which was known here in Germany in terms of the Frankfurter Schule. Or Schule. And that's what was done. So therefore you had a population which, by sophistry by adapting to the mood of, you have to be an anti-communist. You have to be a passionate anti-communist. You have to be totally irrational about it. You have to be pure rage about it. You have to know that you can be crushed if you don't think in a certain way. If you think differently than the other guy in the class, you're suspected. And it was done on the little kiddie level with things like Dr. Spock's book on how to raise a child. So there was a systematic brainwashing of an entire generation. And this came out as the 68er phenomenon. Now, the 68er phenomenon has certain specifics. The specific is, first of all, it's concentrated in the United States on the universities which are associated with Ivy League standards. That is, universities which are regarded as the places from which product is emitted to enter the professions, government, and so forth, the leaders of society. So the 68ers, the ones who went through these educational institutions, and higher education in particular, these are the ones who were the most rotten, the most hit in this process. Because they were targeted. They figured the working slob, the blue-collar guy, you don't have to worry so much about him. He's not going to do anything anyway. But people who deal with ideas, who in the nature of their profession and occupation deal with ideas, these are the people you want to destroy. That's exactly what the cult of Delphi did to the families of the Greeks, of Athens, that led to the Peloponnesian War. This is sophistry in an extreme. It's a study of sophistry applied to modern society. These people have no morality whatsoever. None. They have pragmatic morality. And the typification of science, of course, as I'm referring again today, this thing is Einstein-Born correspondence. Which Born, who was technically qualified as a scientist, was actually an anti-scientist by the time he had gotten the debate. He'd lost his soul. And there was Einstein, who had been one of his teachers. And he's on the other side. He no longer believes in the existence of principles. He believes in the existence of mathematical formulas, of tricks, of procedures, but not in an idea as such, which is the problem we have among many of our Russian friends. Because that ideology in Russia is not just communist ideology. The ideology, the problem is this belief structure. The belief in the object, the belief in the symbol, as opposed to the actual discovery of an idea. Because an idea is real. It is not the shadow of something. An idea is real. An idea is like gravity, universal principle. How big is it? It's as big as the universe. That's why you call it universal. How does it manifest? As a discontinuity. As an object? No. What kind of an object? A discontinuity. There is no object. The object exists only in the universe and in the human mind. It doesn't exist anywhere else as an idea. Only in the universe and only in the human mind. No animal can do it. It's pure creativity. So therefore, the point was with the youth movement is to deal with this problem. You have the youth movement, the adult movement, the baby boomers are generally immoral. And when you deal with them as I deal with them in the Congress, for example, or the Senate, you run into that problem. They're not immoral in a broad sense, but they're immoral in the sense that they're sophists. They're all sophists. Even many of the best of them. They don't know what truth really means. Truth is not a question of something you have to do because it's truthful. Truth is something you can contemplate. You can have an opinion about it. Do I have to act on it? No, I don't think I should act on it this time. The U.S. is going to pieces. Oh, well, maybe so. But I can't act on it this time. But we won't have a U.S. pretty soon if you don't act. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to act at this time. That's the baby boom. At its best. At its moral height. Then you get the tweener generation. And this is not just my observation. These are studies of this in the United States among leading circles of some of the problems of government. Tweener generation. They tend to be religious fanatics or self-righteous bastards about something. So they are not capable of governing because they are so frozen. Their minds are not open. You can't teach them anything, really. That's why they tend to become attracted to religious fanaticism or similar kinds of fanaticism. They're not bad. They're more moral than the baby boomers, but they're not good either. The only chance we have for civilization is with the education of young adults. Now, what we have is not the ability to take the entire young adult generation and educate them directly. We don't. We have to develop a cadre of people who exemplify and spread the disease that we're creating. We have to infect them with the disease. And this has made a fundamental change. As you probably have noticed, we've had a number of people who have been approaching their 30s are now in key positions of leadership in the California Democratic Party, and have won contested elections of this process. We have people in the youth movement who are a key factor in educating the Congress, who are working closely with members in the U.S. Senate and committees of the Congress, who are influential all over the United States in their functions. The entire auto industry thing centers around us, no one else. The question of reorganizing the U.S. military now centers around us. And the youth are the means by which we do it. Because, as you know, there are only a handful of us who are really senior in this area and can handle it. And it's the youth that makes the difference. Why? Because we did the right thing about developing them, and the right thing about using their talents. That is to make sure. Don't try to splatter them with education. Forget it. Concentrate on the development of the creative powers of mind in these two areas: physical science and classical singing, choral singing. And the singing is important, but you must get the thing right. That is not right perfectly, but you have to go in the right direction, not misdirect. You must bring forth this idea of counterpoint, what counterpoint really is. Because otherwise it doesn't click. If they're just singing notes, it doesn't click. They have to actually get into the counterpoint. It has to come out of the mind as an intention of the mind, which you now can physically effect in terms of what you do. And the choral director is crucial in this, because the choral director in the chorus is crucial in the sense of hearing the overview of what's going on in the chorus, and therefore can say, darken, sharpen, this, so forth. And when it's done properly, and they get the idea, then you have something which is a mess, suddenly becomes coherent and intelligible. It's not perfect, but you see the direction it's going in. It suddenly is becoming hearable as music, not as notes. And this development of the mind, because you're dealing with a social process and social relations and social collaboration, has to be complemented by the development of scientific capability. That's what we're doing. Now, what do we have to clean up? Well, we've had a lot of problems which are on both sides of the Atlantic, which are characteristic of various parts of the history of the organization. You have the 77 to 1982 info, which had the organization was taken over by some enemies. But among the things that happened, which had an absolute idiot who was running his little firm, his computer firm, and the whole organization was enslaved to this computer firm. Now, what he was doing, and when I saw the records when I got back for the first time, and to see it in 81, February, I looked at the records they gave me. I saw this. Remember, I'm an old hand at this kind of thing. I used to deal professionally with dealing with bankruptcies. I dealt with them in Canada, I dealt with them in the United States, I dealt with them elsewhere. And I looked at this pile of paper they presented to me on their financial problems. It took me about 2 hours. I had absolute swindle, an absolute fraud, a credit fraud. What they were doing, Andy, in order to get work, would underbid. That means he was going to lose money on the job. Therefore, to keep the cash flow, he had to get more people working for his firm and take more jobs. He had to keep increasing the cash flow input to cover up the fact that overall, his organization was bankrupt from the beginning. And that was one part of the problem. That's why it blew up. This thing was never profitable. It was bankrupt from the beginning. It was bankrupt in conception, and the bankruptcy was in the mind of the owner. And the bankruptcy was then shared by a guy who had been taken over by the government, Costas. Costas had been involved in a legal case, cut a deal with the federal government to get out of the legal case. He went to work for them against us. And he was controlling the organization in the United States while I was here. Yeah, true. So he and Tepaldos together began to introduce the concept of business organization. That we must have a business type of organization. Now, a business type in a political organization is not a business, it's a cult. Because political organizations are based on ideas, on the development of ideas, on the characteristics of the human mind. Business organization today is worse than it was years ago when I was dealing with bankrupt firms. And I dealt with a lot of them. I can tell you all about bankruptcy, because I was there and I had many clients who I had to bail out of bankruptcy. I know how it smells. I know what the disease is. And the disease has become worse in the present generation than it was in the previous generation. Because in the previous generation, there was an element of reality. You had to produce something. In this generation of business, you produce bullshit. And you outsource it. So there's no physical criteria of truthfulness in business practice. Now, an actual business doesn't function the way any of these business experts tell you. And Tepaldos is a perfect case of it. The entire organization was reorganized from 77 into 81 on this idea of the business concept. And you have refractions of it that Uwe and others went through here, where it was spilled over the orders of how to run the organization here, was being dictated from there by Costas and something. It was wrong. Since I was here most of the time in that period, I didn't see it firsthand, but when I got back and looked at these figures, I knew exactly what was wrong. You don't run a political organization as a business organization. You don't apply what are called business principles to run a political organization. Or you don't have a political organization. And if your income is depending upon your political activity, you're not going to get much income if you continue that way. And the problem was we had in the regions, we sort of killed the financial center, but even after 2000, in the regions, we still had a sense that these are separate organizations, and a group of separate organizations with a certain structure are going to run the organization. And the organization kept dying as a result. The idea of structure and group leadership of that type was the cause of our financial problems, because we could have cured the problems otherwise. And the problem was that when you don't have an open discussion of ideas throughout a political organization as a whole, you don't have ideas. Because ideas are based, like music, on the interaction of minds. And therefore, the open, free, and open interaction of minds, with no special kinds of divisions, except the division of leadership, which is something in itself. But leadership is essentially facilitating all people coming into the discussion and using their minds. You don't have some people making decisions and other people carrying out orders. Yes, you have a command structure for action. But the ideas that determine what you're going to command has to be determined by a group process of discussion of ideas, not discussion of orders. Now, what happens is that when you go into this business type of organization, in a political organization, you kill the mind. And you get stupid people out of it. You stupefy them. You destroy their creative powers, their insight. Now, when we bring the youth into the situation, as we did in the States, and you develop the youth operation, they kick butt. And that is good. They are lack of respect for seniors. That is excellent. That is morality. They kick ass. That's good. There's right kicking of ass and wrong kicking of ass, of course. But kicking of ass is necessary. Just have to know where to aim the shoe. and what time, on what occasion. Therefore, what happens is you have a process of intellectual stultification. Now, the reason we are able to change some of these things, I went through this, what I went through in the process in recent times. I went through a process in the U.S. of busting up the so-called group organization. I busted it up. We don't have a group organization anymore in the United States. We eliminated it. And the bankruptcy of PMR, the perennial bankruptcy of PMR, is an example of the problem. The worst mistakes were the idea of using PMR as a model of business. A print shop as a business is going to support the organization. Never works. And you can see what a mess they made. Every decision I've seen that they made in terms of general policy decision was wrong. And there were some legal problems there too, as a result of very stupid kinds of decisions. But PMRs collapsed actually because people were foolish enough not to take my instructions on the thing. In 1997, 1998, it actually went virtually bankrupt on the basis of a business decision, a so-called business opportunity. And they brought down our entire organization, its financial structure. We lost our subscription base on which we had depended as a result of this piece of nonsense. And it was done as a business decision based on group ideas. Doesn't work. The way politics works is, yes, you have to have organization. But the organization has to be based on ideas. The ideas have to be involved in a social process, which everybody is involved, which everybody has access to knowledge of what the decision process is. Because what are you trying to do? You're trying to get a scientific view of politics, a scientific view of the task before. What does that mean? That means that you have to have the concept of universality. Truth involves the notion of universality. Truthful behavior involves the participation of everybody in the process of determining the policy. That doesn't mean they make the policy. It means they must be participants and be influential in criticizing and dealing with the policy that is made. Then it's their idea. It's not the order they're carrying out. Carrying out orders is the way to die. The idea of an elite that gives orders, you win that way. As I know, I started from nothing. I started from me, period. The way you deal with organization is with an appeal to reason. Reason involves the creative powers of people, trying to stir them up, challenge them. We succeed. Now what's happened is the youth have accepted this. Youth movement in the United States. And here where it's younger, the development is not as advanced as it is in some cases in the U.S., so there's some extreme talent. And the same process has happened here. It is the youth generation, the young adults, as they qualify as part of a young adult movement, that has to be the conscience of the actions of the organization and is the major way in which you deal with the population in general. Because the population doesn't trust baby boomers. Even baby boomers don't trust baby boomers, which is their smartest quality. Greatest achievement. They don't trust tweeners. The favorite youth person phrase for a tweener is asshole. They don't like them. They're highly opinionated and they're usually stupid. They're hard to deal with. You have to deal with them. Some of them are nice people, apart from these disqualifications. Well-meaning, but they're not efficient. The tweener generation is not capable of leading a survivable society. And the hope is entirely youth, and people know it. We get a response to youth that you will never get from anybody else. You want to run a political campaign? Get youth in there. Don't get somebody who looks like a baby. Don't bother. You're not going to succeed unless they're a distinguished person. Won't work. The people know that the youth, young adult youth, represent the future of humanity. Politics is about the future. The present is already unspeakable, so let's talk about the future. And the function of youth is to inspire and lead people into a sense of the future. Their very existence is that, because they are the future. Most of us will be dead in less than a generation. We'll be out of activity, of heavy activity, in a shorter period of time. So what the hell are we doing? The baby boomer doesn't believe in the future. That's one of the problems. I believe in the future. Some of us believe in the future. We've dedicated ourselves to the future. Now we come up, the future is, I got bad news for you. It's not much longer. So therefore, the future is what you're doing with the younger generation to whom you can pass the baton. And when people see you doing that, you have the ability to persuade them. Hey, what do you do? Huh? What do you do? Answer. Do you represent the future? Do you care about the future? Young people who are in their 20s are looking at 2 generations to come. Possibly 2 generations of hell, or 2 generations of something good. They care about the future, because that's what they have. They're emerging from childhood and adolescence into the future. Is there a future? The baby boomers try to pretend they're losing the future. So that's the key problem. Right? Now that's what we're curing. Now what's happening is this. We are in a full-scale mobilization, strategic mobilization, and you have to understand something. If the United States goes under, Europe doesn't have a chance, nor does Asia. There's no way that Western Europe, Europe in general, or Eurasia could survive if the United States goes under. Not possible. Because, first of all, Western Europe is heavily oligarchical. That people left Europe for what became the United States to get where they could do something without the damn oligarchy hanging around their necks. So we took the best of European culture and we moved it into North America, where it could express itself freely. It means when you come from the United States and you come into Europe, you get this, you understand why people left here and went to the United States, what became the United States. And you look at the history of how this thing developed in the United States, you see exactly that. There were new ideas developed in the United States, even in the English colonies in the United States. Important ones. Major discoveries. Franklin was a world leader in science, for example. Winthrop, one of the founders, and his family in Massachusetts, was one of the world leaders in science in that period. These were people who left Europe to found a new republic, where they could take the best of Europe and express it in a place where they didn't have a stinking oligarchy hanging around their necks. And that's the problem. Europe does not have a stable presidential system. Europe is governed by central banking systems, which are the real government. The elected government, a parliamentary government, is a farce as an instrument of government. A parliamentary government will be destroyed fatally in any serious crisis by its very nature, particularly if there's a central banking system that's submitting to it. The euro is a suicide pact for Europe. Every day the euro exists as a system, Europe is committing suicide. The French government is now committing hara-kiri. It finally found which way to use a knife. Okay? The British government is blared out. It's finished. Italy has no government at all. It's called the new government. This is accepting reality. That there is no real government in Italy. They're not likely to see one for some time to come. Eastern Europe is worse off economically and has less hope for the future than it had under the Soviet rule of the Comintern. Look at the conditions there. It hasn't got a chance. It's lost the physical ability to recreate itself. Poland, they say, absolutely hopeless. The other states of Eastern Europe, hopeless. They're doomed. Unless something comes to rescue from outside them. Russia has secured a certain kind of stability, partly because the rest of the world is such a mess. Not because they were such geniuses. There is talent in Russia. But it's not that. It's that such a big sucking vacuum exists in the rest of Europe that Russia's desire to grow and recover is highly positive force relative to what's going on in Western Europe and Central Europe. So that's our situation. It has to come from the United States. It will not come from Europe. The ideas that we represent in Europe, or represent in the United States, are essentially European ideas. But this is the extension of European civilization as was proposed by who? By Karl Nicholson Cusa to cross the oceans to find a solution for the problem which could not be found in Europe itself. This is the whole process. Huh? People left Europe because it was hopeless decay, not only because of the religious wars of 1492 through 1648, but because of the British government, what the British government became, because of what the French government became, because of what happened in Europe generally. So the difference in the United States and Europe is, first of all, we have a republic, at least a constitutional republic. Therefore, the ideas. You're ready. Good to see you. We recorded what I did before, so you can substitute it yourself. Okay. So, anyways, the point is, what you have to do is perspective. You have to see it this way. The future of the planet, presuming we succeed, is going to depend upon the development of a concept of a federation of Eurasian states, of sovereign Eurasian states. And according to all the news, if Europe goes under now, China has no chance. If Europe goes under, India has no chance. Asia in general has no chance. So therefore, if the United States goes under, nobody has a chance. Because this planet is now in such a situation with over 6 billion people, and with the destruction of the economy which has occurred in the past period. You cannot sustain a population of 6 billion people on this planet under the present trends. Therefore, a prolonged depression, which is almost virtually inevitable unless we do something about it, means that you're going to go, the whole planet is going to go into a dark age. You look at the situation of China. China is making progress. But China's progress sinks in some respects because it's not dealing with the problem of poor people and infrastructure. China is not producing Chinese products. China is producing European and U.S. products for European and U.S. consumption. India, 80%, 70%, in desperate poverty with no improvement. Oh, there are possibilities. We have, some people in India are now taking seriously the idea we were pushing years ago about a network of thorium-powered high-temperature gas-cooled reactors from 100 to 200 megawatts and up. And with that, you could probably, if you scatter enough of these over enough part of India, you could suddenly transform the landscape in a way which you're probably the only way to save India from catastrophe right now. Because the water sources are out, everything is out. Without some high-power technology, there's no hope for India. This is a possible solution. But without international cooperation, this is not possible. Europe is a garbage heap. Culturally, intellectually, morally, every other way. It's been destroyed. The greatest destruction of Europe came after 1992. It came with the fall of the Soviet Union. Caused a collapse of Europe. Why? Because Europe did it to itself. It shot itself in the head. With Maastricht and similar kinds of policies. And the people went along with it. The ruling class went along with it. So that's the problem. So now you're in a situation that only if we can make a change in the United States can it work. Now why? First of all, because we're Americans. Because we represent the highest level of European civilization, somewhat battered and tattered form from moment to moment. But we still have a sense of a nation-state power. We have a sense of a nation-state rather than a damn parliamentary piece of garbage. And the fact that we have a nation-state government rather than a parliamentary piece of garbage is the big difference. Because the oligarchical picture here, I mean, look at all these magazines and publications in Germany. What do you see? The thing stinks of oligarchy. Oligarchical mentality. France has a lot of oligarchies. It has the oligarchy of the Bourbon oligarchy, and the Fronde included. It has the oligarchy of the Napoleonic aristocracy, so-called. Then it has the outright scum called the radicals. It's not going to function too well. It has not. It has not improved very much. Jacques has tried, but it's going to take a little more than just something inside France to save France. Italy is dead. Italy is not even two countries anymore. It used to be two countries, Mezzogiorno in the north. Now it's being fragmented so further. It's going to be destroyed. So that's the situation. Therefore, if we, with our constitutional system in the United States, intervene in the one thing that is absolutely indispensable to deal with this economic crisis, is to return to what the equivalent of a Bretton Woods system. But that cannot be done by the same Bretton Woods system. That can be done only by going back to the principles of the American system, which is provided for in the Constitution, and no European constitution allows this to occur. The United States does not have a monetary system. Europe has a monetary system. The governments of Europe are controlled by central banking systems, which represent private banking interests, private financial interests. Therefore, no government of Europe is sovereign. They're all subject to European Central Bank, local central bank, international banking, IMF, etc. No government is a government. It's a stooge. It's an errand boy for these authorities, these oligarchical authorities. In the United States, our system is not a monetary system. It's a credit system, a federal credit system. There is no value in money at all. Only idiots believe that money has value. That's why Marxists were stupid. They believed that money had some value, some intrinsic value. Money has no intrinsic value. What killed Marx was his theory of value, which is a piece of stupidity. The United States has a constitutional provision. We create money as the form of credit. The government is authorized, with the permission of the Congress, to order an issue of currency, of official currency, as a monopoly of government. No other agency. That issue of currency is a means for doing what? Right now it means practically the following measures have to occur. Otherwise, forget it. What has to occur is the federal government must put the central banking system of the United States, or Federal Reserve System, into receivership. The Federal Reserve System is essentially, well, a government partnership, is essentially a consort of leading financier interests through banks. So the Federal Reserve System on the underside is controlled by banks, private banks. Actually, the Federal Reserve System, through the private banks, controls now the government. If the government asserts its authority when the banks go bankrupt, or declare to go bankrupt, then the government takes the Federal Reserve System into federal receivership. How does it function? Well, we just take it over in bankruptcy. What do? Well, we go to the Congress and we have a program for long-term capital investment to raise the level of production, employment production in the United States through large-scale infrastructure projects and other means. There's largely 25 to 50-year investments. We then authorize through the Congress an issue of hundreds of billions of dollars of credit by act of Congress. This credit is then managed using the Federal Reserve System taken into receivership by the federal government to capitalize large-scale projects which rebuild industries, or as the key thing we've done, of course, is this business with a section of the auto industry. 2/3 of the so-called auto industry is being scrapped. But it contains the machine tool sector, which is the only burst capability of the U.S. economy. It's the most important burst capability in the world. It's concentrated largely in the auto industry with some extension into the aerospace sector. This is the machine tool capability. This is where science is turned into product. We need nuclear plants, hundreds of them. We need to rebuild the river systems. We need to rebuild a lot of other things. We need to rebuild the railroad system. Right? These things then generate, by the credit being applied to these long-term projects in essential infrastructure, you create a drive. Now, and just as then what kicks in is what happened in Germany with the Kreditanstalt for Gibraltar. As these projects move forward, they generate income and they deposit their income through the banking system in which they work, like the Kreditanstalt. This additional credit deposited and generated by production now becomes additional capital. So you're trying to convert this, increase the turnover of financial capital through this process. This means that you now go ahead with other projects, largest projects, new projects. And if we do that, then we say we're going to change the IMF. We're going to take it back. It's bankrupt too. Every banking system, central banking system in Western Europe is bankrupt. Why not take it over? Okay, you take over the IMF and turn it back into a Bretton Woods model system. Now we get countries that cannot, by constitution, create credit domestically. They still can create credit in another way. That other way is called treaty agreements, long-term treaty agreements. You have the basis for that in Europe right now in terms of, say, relationship with China. This relationship, say, Germany, Russia, China. This is a good example of this. You're talking about long-term developments required to change the character of the China economy. It has to be done. It's doomed if it continues to go the way it's going. It's got to change more so that China is producing more products for China and less products for the world market. Therefore, it has to change its character of industry to produce Chinese goods for Chinese, and for others as well. But the emphasis has to be that their own internal national economy is the bulwark on which the whole economy is based. This is going to require a lot of assistance in capital goods. This means cranking up Western Europe, in particular, cranking up Western Europe and Russia for development and production of the goods which is needed to transform China, and to transform India, and so forth. So therefore you have a prospect for 50 years ahead of agreements which will change the character of the Eurasian mainland. This is a very secure business, because if you are producing more wealth, if you eliminate this inflationary nonsense, you're producing more wealth per capita, per square kilometer, you don't have any problem with your economy. You just keep going. And you will never run out of tasks. The university is wonderful. It's designed so you never run out of work. You always have a job waiting for you. If your government is intelligent enough to make sure you get it. That's the direction. So the United States has to be the spark, political spark, which makes possible the action which otherwise would not occur on this planet, to save civilization. And as we're sitting here today, you are weeks, at least, or most months away from a total collapse of the present system. It's here, it's happening. This is not some speculation. This is now. And what we're doing in the United States is essential for this purpose. And it's being done with years. So therefore, what you have to do here, the lessons of what we have succeeded to do, we're now reviving the ancient people, who are the younger generation I am, but they're now aged and they're about to rot on a Strombrook effect in California. They were the hard cases that would not improve. They refused to improve. They made it a matter of principle. They would not improve. They're now improving. And every other part of the U.S. organization has undergone a qualitative degree of improvement in the past months. And that's what we've been driving. And the key driver in this is the youth movement. The way I run it, the way I set it up. And that's your weapon here. Look at the income. Look at your problems here. The present system is not going to work. Just continue this way. You've got to change it. And you have the weapon to change it in the role of campaigns, political campaigns, which are dominated by youth and which are highly aggressive campaigns. You're dealing with a Germany in particular here, which has no future. Under the present government, the present policies, the present political system, Germany has no future. And that's not a distant prospect, that's a nearby prospect. This country can disintegrate in a very short period of time. So therefore it has to be changed. Who's going to change it? The CDU? The SPD? The Greens? They already did it too much. Who's going to do it? You're going to do it. You're going to do it because we demonstrated in the U.S. how you can do it. We've only got 2 youth movement contingents of any size. And you have to have them in sizes. You can't chop the youth movement up into pieces. And it has to maintain its integrity as a youth movement. You can't break it up and absorb it. Or try. It's suicidal. So we have only 2, this means you want to have youth groups with minimum 15, 25 in group. Otherwise you don't have a functioning youth group. Right, so you have 2 youth groups in Germany now. One in Saxony, one in Berlin. Fine. Berlin is the place to be. About 4 million people, and Berlin is the future of Germany. If it goes down, Germany goes down. If it goes up, Germany goes up. Okay? Saxony is one of the poorer areas of the former DDR. But it has a built-in potential which is not yet destroyed. And Kassenwerder and so forth, under certain inspiration, and a kick in the butt or 2, did manage to pull off a very credible performance in Leipzig. And so you're at the point, because you see it in the U.S., I just one thing on the U.S. You look at the Democratic Party now. Now, it's not the Democratic Senate machine and so forth. It's not fell apart in February of this year. It was under certain kinds of pressure and they fell apart. They're vulnerable. But a position in the county chair level of the Democratic Party organization, in the constituency groups, the voters are telling us, we want to kick this Congress in the ass, including the Democratic Party. This do-nothing, gutless Democratic Party. The one they were praising last year when we were leading the Democratic Party, at least in terms of policy. They say, kick them in the ass. They're turning to us. And the most effective thing we have is the youth movement. But we changed the organization in Leesburg in the sense that we destroyed the kind of intelligence operation that was sort of chugging around like a broken down locomotive in the office. And we now have a war room operation. We have ass kickers kicking asses and kicking ass kickers. We don't let people come in and say, well, today's intelligence is. Come on. Get out of bed. And we actually are doing creative work. For example, let's take the case of this one thing with this Visible Cheney company. All right. Now, the intelligence you would get from the newspapers on what happened with the Libby case, if you didn't get it from us, or you didn't go to the U.S. and look at the sites we look at, or the people we talk to, you might get it wrong. Because interpreting newspapers does not tell you what's going on in any part of the world. Doesn't. Because they all lie. They suppress essential things, they shape it, like the reports in the U.S. major media on the Libby case and the Cheney relationship was fake. They took the actual reports and they scrubbed them down to eliminate the crucial features. Let me explain this. What's the crucial feature of the Cheney factor in the Libby case? Fitzgerald was never going after Libby. He was never going after Karl Rove. His target was Cheney, because he knew a long time ago that Cheney was the guilty party. Means you have to get Cheney, the vice president, out. To get him out, you have to have a case which is a solid prosecution type of case. What's the most important thing in a legal prosecution? Apart from all this about law. Motive. How do you get a conviction? Motive. Now what did he do? Which is what's suppressed in the United States. What did Fitzgerald do? He went for motive. What was the motive for the unveiling of Joe Wilson's wife? They have the motive. It's in Cheney's own handwriting, scribbled on this and that. It shows that Cheney, who was the superior of Libby, had an obsession of getting Wilson, an obsession of going after Wilson's wife. Therefore, now you have the crime, but that doesn't convict people. What convicts people is the discovery and identification of the motive for the crime. That's how you convict. And that's what was suppressed. The newspapers are playing this aspect down. Even they would report sections of the filing. But the only way you could get it, you had to look in detail at the lawyer's mind, at the filing as a whole, and all the filings. And you had, of course, you had some help from people we're talking to who are also in other aspects of this thing. So we have a very thorough, in-depth intelligence scoping of this operation. Much better than we would have any chance of having in Europe. We have it. We have it because we have an organization now, a war room type organization, which enables us to amplify what we were capable of doing earlier. Okay? And also we have the fact we have youth who are going into the Congress. We don't do it just by ourselves. We have whole teams of youth working in the Congress. And they're competent. They're smarter than most congressmen. They know more than most congressmen because we've educated them properly, and they've educated themselves properly. They're intellectually alive. They're not brain dead, as many people in the older generation tend to get these days. So that's the key. And the key here is to get the same kind of effect here. And the way to do it is take political campaigns, election campaigns. That's your key. Because that's when the voters treat you seriously. If you're not running an election campaign, you have very ephemeral contact with the voters. If you're running some kind of election campaign, they listen to you. If you're young, they'll listen to you much better than if you're older. Don't get bald. You'll lose voter support. So the point is, the point I wanted to get here before I left you and back to the States, especially, is this point. We have a success in the U.S. It's a very significant success. It's not perfection, it's not paradise. A lot of problems. But we have broken the back of the major problem. We broke the back of it because we developed the youth movement the right way, deployed it the right way, and had the correct emphasis on political. For example, we have 3 elements of income as an organization. One, the PAC. The PAC is scheduled at $125,000 a week. The $125,000 a week is for the political campaigns. We have a smaller amount which goes in from the regions into the national office to sustain the national functions. Otherwise, we have a third element, which is the money which is raised locally in each of the regions. These are the 3 elements. So that's what you have here, essentially the same thing. You have a national function, which is a national function. You have regional expenses, which are regional. And you have the campaign. And the campaign is the driver. It's the campaign that will get you your income. It's just a formula. You can take whatever we spend on LPAC will determine what we get as a lesser amount in terms of income between our shareholders. It's about 2 to 1. Twice as much spent on the campaign as on the national expenses. It works for obvious reasons. I mean, the thing that economics does not work on the basis of mom and papa stores. Economics is dynamic, it is not accounting. Never try to understand economics from the standpoint of accounting. You have to do your accounting, and which some people have not done things that were as illegal as they were in this area in the United States. But you have to be honest accounting, and we had very dishonest accounting, which was now ended. But accounting will never tell you how to run a business. Never let your accountant tell you how to run a business. He may have some sharp observations you should listen to, but don't let him tell you how to run a business, because he's inherently wrong. The way to run a business is from the standpoint of production. Producing. How does it work? The actual economic process is dynamic. Everything interacts. In our case, it's the relationship between the PAC activity, which is our principal political activity, and the national functions and the regional functions. The balance and the task orientation has to be defined accordingly. And what works is not what you can sell. Buying and selling is not the secret of running an organization such as ours. What's important is ideas. Are you putting forth ideas? Are they the right ideas to move a population? Otherwise, you're wasting your time. And you're wasting the time of people trying to raise money. Therefore, you have to think, concentrate on ideas, concentrate on discussion of ideas, increase the activity of discussion of relevant ideas, increase the general participation of the entire organization throughout in a common discussion of ideas. Use that as a stimulant, and then take the things we do have to do, like this campaign, that campaign, this issue, that issue, and run campaigns. Whether educational campaigns are an issue, political campaigns, it's the same thing, and you find you will change the character of your income. My concern, on the other hand, is seeing what I see here. If the change doesn't occur, as it would have happened if we didn't make the change in the U.S., you've got a disaster on your hands, a building disaster. So forget all this, usual business-like kind of operation. Yeah, run a neat business, do straight accounting. Be careful how you do things. But don't try to run it on advice from business. I remember there's this bunch of assholes across the river over there. The business school. Whatever, find out what they teach and make sure you never do it.